Welcome into our final Road to the Draft, coming to you from Bucs Studio, presented by Ticketmaster. Casey Phillips here with senior writer and editor Scott Smith. I don't know, maybe we should call this the road back from the draft.
Past the draft?
The road past it. We're just continuing on here that we did, every week leading up to the draft, we talked about what we thought was going to happen, and now we finally know we have the newest additions to the crew to talk about. So today we thought we'd just go through the different draft picks, look at kind of big picture what the Bucs did, look at each of them individually, where we feel like they could contribute now that we know who these guys are. So let's start with the big picture side. Okay. As you just look at what the Bucs accomplished, what they did, and especially maybe compared to what we thought they were going to do, what stands out?
I guess I'll ask you, how do you feel about reading like draft grades right after a draft? Is it kind of similar to how you feel about mock drafts before the draft?
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty much as useless. Isn't it what the 3-year rule, isn't that typically more?
But then I still do it.
Oh, of course, we all do it.
And so what I immediately noticed this year is that the draft grades for the Buccaneers tend to vary between like a B and an A+. I remember Pete Prisco of CBS Sports gave an A+ and really gave Jason Light his flowers for once again drafting a lot of good players. And you're seeing a lot of that now, that people are starting to realize what a great job Jason's been doing for year after year now. And it all comes down to the variance there between the B and the A+ every single time comes down to how do you feel about the Buccaneers using their first-round pick on wide receiver.
Yeah, on a non-defensive guy. Yeah.
And I'm not gonna be a revisionist historian here. I was one of those people that was skeptical right up to the end, even though Todd Bowles and Jason Light were dropping all these breadcrumbs about, hey, we might actually do this. And then afterwards, you see the wisdom of it. Mm-hmm. And a lot of it just has to do with value. The value of getting a player like that in a pass-driven league, even if you already have a good passing offense, that value was there in the first round. And yes, the Buccaneers needed to hit defense. And who am I? I'm the cornerback guy, right? Mm-hmm. You tell me at the end of this draft that we got Benjamin Morrison and Jacob Parrish in the second round at corner, I'm ecstatic.
Yep.
So to me, there's no flaw in this plan of using that first pick on a player that they absolutely love in Emeka Bucca.
Completely in love with. Yeah, and we hear this all the time, right? The I am that man strategy.
Exactly.
And we have seen in recent years how well this has worked out when you look at the fact of what a huge percentage of our starters, of our stars, are homegrown talent, and it is because they've stuck to this idea. And I think after just spending one day with Emeka, every single person here is like, he is that man. That's the thing. You can see why he plays like a Chris Godwin, carries himself like a Chris Godwin. We have seen that if anyone tells a Bucs fan, hey, there's a chance you could get another Chris Godwin,
right? I
mean, how would you not be excited about that?
And the Bucs got Chris Godwin in the third round, but if they did that draft over again, he would be a first-round pick.
You would 100% be thrilled with him as a first-rounder.
Yeah, if you can get another guy like that. And, you talk about things like maybe the 40-yard dash, and you can see incrementally, okay, if that 4.4 is better than that 4.5, and 4.3 is better. When they talk about judging these guys' character and that whole I am that man thing, there's not really a number you can put to that, yet they're still saying Emeka Bucca's off the charts when it comes to how they value him in that regard. And as you said, I think that's the reason why so many of these draft classes are working out over and over again, and why this team is so incredibly homegrown, particularly on offense. So, after it's all said and done, I think we love the fact that we have Emeka Bucca here. And 2 months ago, would we have expected a first-round wide receiver? No. But when you put it all together and what the Buccaneers were able to do on defense after that, and we'll get to each guy, but not only did they hit cornerback position in a way that I love, but at the end of that night, you had Mike Beal, director of Vice President of Player Personnel, stand up there saying, yeah, I think we can still address the pass rush. And then to do what they did with David Walker and Elijah Roberts on day 3, I think they did hit that. And I don't know if I would have thought it was possible going into the draft to take a receiver in the first round, satisfy what I was hoping we'd get in cornerback, and help the front rotation.
Yeah.
But it looks like they did.
I agree. I think that would have been the concern people had, was if you take a non-defensive guy in the first round, how well can you address those things later?
Are you behind the 8 ball
Yes,
now?
And now I think getting the hindsight of seeing what they did the rest of the days, I don't think you feel that way at all, which is great. And of course, as much as we talk about Emeka for his character, which is phenomenal, it's not like he's a schlub on the field. Like this guy, I mean, for an Ohio State wide receiver room that is consistently stacked, this is the guy who's the all-time leader in receptions for that school. That is wild to me.
And it's not because he stayed around like 4 years or something.
Yeah. It's incredible. And I love it. He could have come out last year even and just decided to stay. So I am incredibly excited about him. So let's get to the round 2 and 3, which I imagine they put you in charge of. That's how I felt when we took 2 cornerbacks in a row. I was like, did they just let Scott make the phone calls up there? And that's what happened. So
I wish.
Let's start round 2. Benjamin Morrison, Notre Dame. game. Tell me a little bit about what stands out to you about this guy.
One thing I like about this, if you look back on our Road to the Draft series, we did cover a lot of these guys. I mean, we did talk about Emeka Egbuka in, like, I think our second episode, showed some nice highlights of him catching the ball down the middle. The very first guy that I gave the Buccaneers in my first mock draft was Benjamin Morrison. Now, as it turns out, because of concerns about the fact that he missed all but 6 games last year with a hip injury, although he really didn't have a history of injuries before that, that probably meant he didn't get taken in the first round. But the Buccaneers felt like they got a first-round talent in Benjamin Morrison. So that worked out very well for the Buccaneers. I think he probably was maybe one of the last guys in the top tier of corners that they wanted to get. And so this is a guy who just, before he got hurt, was playing as well as any cornerback in the nation. And he, I think he had 9 interceptions from 2022 to 2023. Todd Bowles wants more ball hawks in his secondary, and that's what this guy is. And he can play. He can make interceptions. Mike Beal told me, he's like, it's not just playing zone and having your eyes on the quarterback, the whole guy. He covers so well that he makes interceptions and passes defense while in man-to-man coverage, where his back is to the ball most of the time. So the guy has a feel for the football, and that's obviously something we want.
Yeah, and I think we've seen that. I mean, we always talk about the fact that Todd Bowles values versatility, especially because when we've looked at the ways that we've been able to deal with some injuries, especially in the secondary, is by having these Swiss Army knives like a Christian Izien, like a Tyke Smith. So you want guys in your secondary in particular to be able to do multiple things, whether it's man and zone or it's even kind of playing multiple positions. And I know they feel like a guy like Benjamin Morrison can do that. And a lot of people think, the only reason he was even here is because of the medical stuff that he had to go on with his hip. And I think it's interesting to look at the draft. It's always sort of a gamble and trying to predict the future of what people are going to be. And there is no sure thing. But if you feel like there is someone that you feel good about where they're progressing health-wise, and that if not for that injury, they might have been a first-round pick, that is the way you get a steal. That's how you take those risks in a draft of saying, we think we can try to predict that this guy is going to be healthy at a certain point and can then really contribute in a way that we get a steal at that pick.
And what else does Todd Bowles love in his cornerbacks? Speed.
Yeah.
He was asked about how important speed testing is, like at the combine and so on, when you're evaluating those prospects. And Todd Bowles specifically said, well, it's important at some positions like cornerback. You need speed at cornerback. And so look at Jacob Parrish. I think Maxwell Harrison of Kentucky is a guy the Bucs might have been interested in if they didn't get Egbuka. And he was the fastest guy at any position at the combine, but Jacob Parrish wasn't far off. 4.35 40-yard dash, very feisty player, they call him, because I guess he's about 5'10", so he's not the biggest, longest cornerback in the world. As you can see there, he's matching up against a bigger guy and doing a good job physically there. He has a ton of pass breakups the last couple of years, so he's productive, he's fast, and he probably, again, would have gone a little bit higher if he was 6 foot tall.
Yeah, he was a 100 and 200 meter state champ in Kansas. Not too shabby. And I also I also played basketball, and I think Mike Beal said he also wrestled.
I'm like, love this. His brother did too, so you can picture the two brothers. His dad
absolutely.
Was a wrestler.
Yeah, 5 interceptions, 94 tackles, and 23 passes defensed in his last 2 seasons. And so again, both corners seem to have that versatility, which now you take a position that you were a little unsure of just because of the idea of depth and what if there are injuries, and now you short up with 2 guys who both bring versatility, and now suddenly you feel so much better about where you could move everybody in the depth and what that could look like. All right, so now let's move to our 4th round pick, outside linebacker David Walker out of Central Arkansas. What did you like about this guy?
Well, so first of all, David Walker was just productive, and if you're going to play at a level like Central Arkansas, at that level, you really have to dominate consistently to be on teams' radars for the draft, because you can't play at that level and just sometimes be dominant. You have to dominate consistently, and then still teams are going to worry, can they do that at a higher level of competition?
Will it translate?
And that's why it's important that David Walker went to the Senior Bowl and just absolutely dominated there as well. And so that answered a lot of questions for obviously Bucs scouts and some others around the league, that this is a guy who can produce like he did at Central Arkansas at this level. And to get that guy in the 4th round, if he can produce anywhere near that level, 39 sacks.
That's an insane number. Yeah, his stat line blew my mind. Of the 39 sacks, 82.5 tackles for loss, 244 tackles, 6 forced fumbles, 8 passes defensed. that is a stat line. And so you're right. Like if you're going to be playing at that level, that's the stat line you want to see. But I did love that sack number because of the finishing clearly that he has of where, I mean, yeah, he's clearly not only getting to the quarterback, but getting them down. And that's what we want to see is those finishes.
Especially off the edge.
Especially off the edge, like that. And Bowles has really emphasized, like, man, we've got to be able to get that rush with 4. And to see a guy like this who clearly knows how to get there and finish a play, I think that's really exciting.
Yeah, and I don't think the Buccaneers have to rely on hitting an absolute grand slam right off the bat with David Walker because they are comfortable with their depth there before and after drafting David Walker. Hassan Reddick, I think, really makes them feel a lot more comfortable. Yaya's going into his 3rd year and is progressing upwards. They think Chris Braswell can take a step forward this time. You still got Anthony Nelson. They feel like the pieces are there to have a decent pass rush, edge rush, but it's always good to get more.
I wouldn't be surprised if the Hassan Reddick signing is what allowed them to draft Emeka Egbuka. That, like,
yeah,
I think that
right.
I can see that would have been the thing that makes them go, okay, we now don't have to do this out of a true, like, kind of desperation need situation. That as much as there were things on defense we knew that they wanted to address, I almost feel like that could have directly correlated to getting to just, and then you still get to address edge later, but maybe you didn't feel that 1st or 2nd round pressure.
It's the same thing with linebacker with signing Anthony Walker and getting Servacio Dennis back from injury.
Yeah, so David Walker I think is an exciting one. Next up, 5th round, Elijah Roberts, defensive line out of SMU, my dad's alma mater. I was excited,
how about
little smooth guy.
I think this was an indication of really the depth of interior defensive linemen in this draft. It may have been the deepest position overall. You saw those guys going in every round, right from Kenneth Grant and Mason Graham at the top of the draft and on, round after round, teams getting interior defensive linemen they like. And so there was still one that the Buccaneers liked very much in the 5th round in Elijah Roberts from SMU. And it was funny because I talked to Mike Beal right after the pick, and he was giving me some insight on what type of player he was. And he had just seen a tweet from Pro Football Focus about him. And it was funny for me the rest of that afternoon and evening to see various people in the organization here come across that tweet because they're looking for information on this newest player. And everybody's like, wait, is this true? And I kept seeing that in different forums because PFF said he led the entire FBS over the last 2 years combined with 131 quarterback pressures.
That's incredible.
At every position, not just interior defensive line.
131. All college football, like wild.
It's a wild stat. It's a crazy stat. And it was just so fun seeing people come across it one after the other. And, you're talking about a guy that's probably going to play. He's probably going to be in your rotation and get that in the 5th round. I think, again, this is just showing how this – you take the receiver, you take that premium position, a player you love in the 1st round, and you still hit the needs you wanted.
It's a big deal.
And defense.
Still, 17.5 sacks over the last 2 seasons, too. So it's not like he's only pressuring. Like, he was getting there and finishing that as well. And I thought it was interesting that Mike Beal also said that he played a little bit on the edge in college.
For SMU.
And that he was like, maybe there's a chance he can play out there a little bit, too. But, again, going back to how much Bowles loves that versatility, if you're seeing Vita Vea occasionally drop, like, I just know that no matter where on that defense, he loves guys that he can figure out ways to surprise the offense with stuff. So a guy like this where, like Beal said, he's going to be in the defensive line room.
Right.
He's not an edge, but how cool that he has done a little bit of both to have that versatility.
When they talk about doing that, I think they mostly talk about 3rd downs. So you probably want as much as possible that Vita Vea and Khaled Kancey in there when you're even fronts, when you have just 4 guys rushing the passer. And again, you have your edge rush rotation, but you could always use more. And if some of those snaps are occasionally taken up by a guy like Elijah Roberts, maybe playing a little bit on the edge in those obvious passing situations, you can get more pass rushers on the field.
All right, and then finally, 7th round. We did not have a 6th rounder because that was part of the trade with Carlton Davis with the Lions. So 7th rounder, Tez Johnson, Tasmanian Devil, which I love.
Of course.
He talked about that that's why he's got that thing that says the Tasmanian Devil around his neck. And he's a wide receiver / punt returner out of Oregon. And
/ Bucky Irving's best friend.
/ Bucky Irving's best friend. I'm like, that's reason alone to draft him. Give Bucky his best friend over here. So 169 catches, 20 touchdowns in this Oregon offense these last 2 seasons. This is another guy that we think is available maybe later than you would have thought because of just his size. And man, I will take a guy that is smaller with that chip on his shoulder any day. I mean, I feel like I've heard so many guys on our team, if they are undersized, talk about what a motivating factor that is. But yeah, I mean, this guy seems like a playmaker that we got to steal.
I saw some reactions in the media afterwards, and they did feel like it was a steal. And some of them were as high as I would have taken this guy in the 3rd round. But because of production. Now, obviously, you said it. The reason is he's 5'4". I mean, sorry, he's not 5'4".
I was like, whoa.
154 pounds is what I meant to say.
I was like, okay, now I might understand.
Yeah.
That's
so what is it? I don't know.
5'10".
5'10", 154 pounds. And his official 40-yard dash time was 4.51, which is pretty good. I wish I could run a 4.51, but it's not that absolute off-the-chart speed that would go, okay, he's maybe only 154 pounds, but he runs a 4.28. No, he runs a nice 4.51, but everybody says he plays a lot faster than that 40 time. And you see it. I think the tape is the best thing to go to with him, because
that's always what matters more. There's tons of people who can run fast, but it doesn't show up in the game, and the game is where it matters.
You see him turning cornerbacks
40-yard dashes are not deciding an overtime game for us.
Yeah, so you see him getting separation really quickly. You see him turning cornerbacks around. So he's a really good route runner. He's a very sudden player. He might help in the punt return game. He said that punt return game is mine.
Oh, I love it. Yeah, he seems fun.
Yeah,
I'm excited.
He's going to be a lot of fun.
Rob McCartney, assistant general manager, said he doesn't play 4-5, plays a lot faster. And then I love this. He said there are a lot of instances when he's the fastest player on the field, and there's multiple games when he was the best player on the field too. And I'm like, and we got him in the 7th round. So, all right, that's going to do it for us on this draft recap show. And again, we were just so fired up to see all of these newest members of the crew. Make sure you're staying tuned for all the coverage of them as they head into rookie minicamp and OTAs. We'll see you next time.